Thank you, Maria, and thank you for a wonderful introduction. I'm really pleased to be here today to welcome you all, participants and distinguished speakers, to this industry forum held under the auspices of the National GS1 Traceability Advisory Group. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the importance of digital trade, and we can only expect this importance to grow. An ever greater share of global trade is being conducted digitally or being facilitated by digital technologies. These innovations are transforming our economies and they're creating lots of new opportunities for businesses and consumers, but digitised trade processes rely on interoperability and on common standards. It's in Australia's and everyone else's interest to seek to establish consistent and high quality digital trade rules and standards in the region and globally. Australia, and my department in particular, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, works through various forums to reduce barriers to digital trade and build an environment in which businesses and consumers can benefit now and in the future. Australia's been at the forefront of negotiating global digital trade rules. This was demonstrated recently by the landmark Australia-Singapore Digital Economy Agreement, which entered into force in December 2020 and is setting a new benchmark for our region. Digital economy cooperation is a priority for the relationship with Singapore, and the implementation of the DEA is well underway through 7 different memorandum of understanding, including one focusing particularly on trade facilitation. Australia is also the co-convener with Japan and Singapore of the WTO Joint Statement Initiative on E-commerce, leading negotiations to develop the first set of global digital trade rules. In our free trade agreement negotiations and in these other forums, we're seeking to develop robust rules that promote greater openness and reliability in digital markets, including rules to facilitate cross-border data flows and interoperability of trade-enabling technologies. We also prioritise appropriate protections for privacy and consumers to contribute to safety and trust in online activity. Australia is also actively supporting the role and work of the international standard-setting organisations such as UNCFACT. UNCFACT has been at the forefront of developing recommendations and standards for international trade that are being used worldwide to simplify and harmonise international trade procedures and information flows. Australian private sector experts are contributing significantly to the growing body of recommendations through UNCFACT. Today is a really wonderful opportunity to hear from a range of experts working actively in the development of digital trade standards. And I'd like to thank Maria, Peter, and the rest of the National GS1, the Traceability Advisory Group, for organising such a great opportunity. I'll now introduce our 2 keynote speakers today, both of whom are working in their respective organisations on major digital trade facilitation initiatives. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Oswald Kyler, the Managing Director of the Digital Standards Initiative at the International Chamber of Commerce. Oswald's the former Head of Data Strategy at BHP, the world's largest diversified mining company. He's worked on initiatives covering blockchain, electronic documentation in trade, data and analytics, and automation. Before BHP, he was on the leadership team of EOHMS in South Africa, delivering solutions for a diverse customer base globally, focusing on areas such as electronic documentation and records management, enhanced collaboration, business process management, and reporting. Oswald's now bringing his strong technology and business focus to his work on trade digitisation and the development of standards at the International Chamber of Commerce. Our second keynote speaker today is Mr. Randall Brugeau, the head of the Australian Government's Simplified Trade System Implementation Task Force. In June this year, the Australian Government announced the establishment of the task force to lead a whole-of-government microeconomic reform program focused on simplifying and modernising Australia's cross-border trade system and strengthening Australia's economic resilience. Randall is a highly experienced public servant with both private and public sector roles, with a major focus on transformation. This has included a decade at Boston Consulting Group and a private IT consulting firm he founded and operated. Immediately prior to his role as head of the task force, he was the Chief Executive Officer of the Digital Transformation Agency for 3 years. He was Deputy Australian Statistician and Chief Operating Officer at the Australian Bureau of Statistics and Chief Information Officer at both the former Department of Immigration and Border Protection and the Australian Customs and Border Protection Service. In April 2020, Randall was also appointed the inaugural head of the Australian Public Service digital profession. In this role, Randall's helping to raise the digital capability of the APS workforce and set a standard of excellence for digital professionals that supports delivery of world-leading services for Australians. I'd now like to invite our first keynote speaker, Oswald, to take the floor. Thank you.